Hello Army, welcome back to my channel. If you're new here, go ahead and hit that subscribe button, because today's story is one of those genuinely wild moments where you watch a number climb higher and higher and just keep thinking, there's no way this keeps going. We're talking about Christie's, one of the most prestigious auction houses in the entire world, a charity sale connected to the FIFA World Cup, and a single shirt worn by Jimin that ended up leaving American collectors, sports fans, and casual internet users completely stunned. Let's get into exactly what happened. So let's start from the very beginning, because the context here genuinely matters. Back in July, the world watched something that had literally never happened before at a FIFA World Cup final, an official halftime show. FIFA had never done this at a World Cup final in the tournament's entire history. This was brand new territory, and the lineup chosen to headline that historic first was massive. Madonna opened the performance. Justin Bieber delivered an acoustic set. And BTS took the stage to perform their global hit Dynamite in front of a packed stadium crowd at MetLife Stadium in New Jersey, during the Spain vs Argentina final, with a worldwide television audience watching along. Being part of a genuinely historic first like that already guarantees a certain level of lasting cultural significance. Every detail from that specific performance, every outfit, every accessory, every single second of stage time, instantly became tied to a permanent milestone in football history. And that significance is exactly what set the stage for what happened next. After the tournament wrapped up, Christie's announced a charity auction titled One Goal, an auction to benefit the FIFA Global Citizen Education Fund. This wasn't some small, casual online sale, this was Christie's, a name that carries the same weight in the auction world as the most prestigious galleries carry in fine art. The auction ran for a full 7 days, open to bidders from all over the globe, featuring 26 different items connected to the tournament and specifically to that historic halftime performance. Every dollar raised was earmarked to go directly toward expanding access to quality education and football opportunities for children in underserved communities across more than 200 countries. Among those 26 items were pieces worn by each of the 7 BTS members during their portion of the Dynamite performance, jerseys, jackets, accessories, and boots, each donated individually by the group. Christie's, being the professional auction house that they are, assigned pre-auction estimates to each piece based on standard memorabilia valuation practices. For each individual BTS item, those estimates landed somewhere in a fairly modest range, roughly $1,000 to $5,000 per piece. That's a completely reasonable estimate for stage-worn memorabilia from a well-known group, exactly the kind of number you'd expect walking into an auction like this. Jimin's shirt specifically carried that same estimate. A custom-designed piece created by Agro Studio, notably the only shirt in the entire performance that Studio designed exclusively for one specific member, it was expected to sell somewhere in that same $3,000 to $5,000 range. And then the bidding actually opened, and things started moving in a direction nobody fully anticipated. Within just the first several days of the auction running, Jimin's shirt had already climbed to around $15,000, driven by 48 separate competitive bids. At that point, it had already become both the highest bid and the single most actively bid item in the entire 26-piece auction, according to reporting that tracked the numbers in real time. Keep in mind, that number alone was already 3 times higher than the top end of its original professional estimate, and there were still several full days of bidding left to go. By the time the auction officially closed at the end of that 7-day window, the final price for Jimin's shirt had reached an almost unbelievable number, $110,000. Let that sit for a second. An item that professional appraisers at one of the most respected auction houses in the world estimated would sell for somewhere between $3,000 and $5,000 ended up closing at $110,000, more than 20 times higher than its original high-end estimate. And here's the part that turned this from an impressive individual result into a genuinely headline-worthy story, that price wasn't just the top BTS-related sale of the night. It was the single highest-selling item across the entire auction, out of all 26 pieces included in the event. Now let's really dig into exactly who and what got outsold here, because once American media outlets and casual internet users started seeing the full comparison, that's really when the shock factor hit. Lionel Messi, one of the most decorated footballers in the history of the sport, had a signed Argentina jersey included in the auction, one that he had personally gifted to Shakira. That jersey sold for $66,000, an extraordinary result for any piece of sports memorabilia. Still, notably, well below Jimin's final total. Madonna, an artist whose influence on pop culture has spanned more than 4 decades, had a pair of autographed, fingerless gloves included, worn specifically during her performance opening the halftime show. Those gloves closed at $41,800. Another genuinely massive number for a single item. Still well short of what Jimin's shirt ultimately reached. Justin Bieber, one of the best-selling recording artists of the streaming era, had a pair of sneakers included, worn during his acoustic performance of Everything Hallelujah earlier in the tournament. Those sneakers sold for $26,400. Still an incredible result on its own. Still less than a quarter of Jimin's final number. So when American audiences started seeing this specific lineup of comparisons laid out side by side, that's genuinely when a lot of the shock and disbelief started spreading. We're talking about arguably the greatest footballer of his generation, one of the most influential pop icons in music history, and one of the most commercially successful recording artists working today, all featured in the exact same charity auction, all posting genuinely massive, headline-worthy results in their own right. And every single one of them still ended up below Jimin's final number. The only item in the entire auction that matched his final price exactly was the official match ball used during the actual World Cup final itself, the ball from the Spain vs Argentina match. That ball also closed at exactly $110,000, tying directly with Jimin's shirt for the top 2 highest-selling items of the entire event. Sit with that comparison for a moment. The literal, physical ball used during one of the most significant football matches on the planet, a genuinely singular, irreplaceable artifact by definition, ending up tied dollar for dollar with a performance shirt worn during a musical interlude at that same event. That's the kind of comparison that made a lot of American sports fans, people who might not follow K-pop closely at all, stop scrolling and take notice. Let's zoom out a bit further, because Jimin's individual result, as remarkable as it is on its own, was part of a much bigger pattern involving the entire group that night. Every single one of the 7 BTS members had their performance-worn items in this auction, and every single one of them dramatically outperformed their original pre-auction estimates. V's scarf sold for $46,200. Jungkook's jacket also closed at $46,200. Suga's stage-worn pants reached $33,000. J-Hope's gloves sold for $28,600. RM's boots closed at $19,800, and Jin's belt rounded out a genuinely dominant showing across the board. Add all 7 of those individual items together, and you get a combined total of $300,300, generated entirely from 7 pieces of stage-worn clothing and accessories from a single performance segment. And here's the number that really puts this whole story into perspective for anyone still processing the scale of it, that $300,300 accounted for roughly 46% of the entire auction's total revenue. The complete event, featuring 26 items spanning football and music legends from across the entire tournament, raised $652,630 in total. Nearly half of that entire amount came specifically from 7 items connected to one group's 4-minute performance. That's an extraordinary statistic under any circumstances, and it's honestly a huge part of why American media outlets picked this story up so quickly once the final numbers were confirmed. A 20 times markup over professional estimates is already a story on its own. Outselling globally recognized names like Messi, Madonna, and Bieber adds an entirely different layer of shock value. And the fact that one group's items accounted for nearly half of an entire charity auction's total proceeds turns this from a surprising headline into a genuinely remarkable data point about where cultural and commercial influence currently sits in the entertainment world. Let's also spend a little time on why the American reaction specifically leans so heavily toward disbelief and surprise, because I think that's worth unpacking a bit. For a lot of casual American audiences who might follow football closely, or who grew up with Madonna as a defining cultural icon, or who have watched Justin Bieber's career unfold in real time over the past decade and a half, those 3 names carry enormous, immediately understood cultural weight. Seeing a K-pop performer's shirt outsell all 3 of them in a direct, apples-to-apples auction comparison creates exactly the kind of unexpected result that breaks through algorithmic feeds and generates genuine, widespread conversation, even among people who couldn't have named a single BTS song a week earlier. There's also the simple, visceral shock of the raw numbers themselves. A 20 times markup over a professional estimate is the kind of statistic that gets shared specifically because it defies typical expectations so dramatically. Numbers like that tend to spread through comment sections and quote posts precisely because they're almost hard to believe at first glance, prompting people to double-check the figures themselves before accepting that yes, this genuinely happened exactly as reported. And then, of course, there's the charitable angle underlying this entire story, which honestly deserves just as much attention as the eye-popping dollar figures. Every single cent raised through this auction, all $652,630 of it, goes directly toward the FIFA Global Citizen Education Fund, supporting access to quality education and football opportunities for children in underserved communities worldwide. So while the headline-grabbing element of this story is obviously the shocking price tag, the actual outcome of all that competitive bidding is real, meaningful support flowing toward a genuinely worthwhile cause. That context adds a layer of substance to the story that goes well beyond just being a viral, jaw-dropping number. Let's also touch on the specific item itself for a moment, because it wasn't just generic merchandise pulled from a broader product line. The shirt was a custom, one of one piece created by Agro Studio, and according to reporting on the auction, Jimin was the only member of the group for whom that particular studio designed a piece exclusively for this performance. That level of exclusivity naturally adds real weight to an item's collectability. It wasn't mass-produced or part of a standard stage costume set, it was a singular, custom-crafted garment made specifically for this one historic performance. That kind of built-in rarity is very likely part of why competitive bidding on this specific piece accelerated so quickly once the auction opened. Now, I want to spend a little time reflecting on what this entire story says about the current scale of BTS's global cultural footprint, because I think it's genuinely worth sitting with. This wasn't a niche fan marketplace or a small collectors forum, this was Christie's, one of the most historically significant, globally respected auction houses on the planet, a name typically associated with fine art, rare historical artifacts, and genuinely museum-quality pieces of human history. For a piece of pop performance memorabilia to not only be featured in a Christie's auction, but to become the single highest-selling item across an entire event that also included football and music legends, says an enormous amount about how far BTS's cultural and commercial reach has expanded into spaces that historically weren't easily accessible to K-pop artists. And it's worth remembering, this result happened entirely organically, through genuine, competitive bidding from real collectors spread across 24 different countries. Nobody guaranteed this outcome through marketing or promotional strategy, it happened because real individuals, independently, around the world, decided this specific item was worth bidding aggressively for. That kind of decentralized, voluntary financial commitment is honestly some of the most compelling evidence you can find when trying to measure genuine, organic cultural impact, precisely because nothing about it was manufactured or guaranteed in advance. Before we wrap up, I want to hear from you. Were you one of the people genuinely shocked when you first saw this number, or does this feel like exactly the kind of result you'd expect at this point given everything BTS has already accomplished on a global scale? And which of the 7 BTS auction items do you think deserved the top spot the most? Drop your thoughts down in the comments, I read every single one, and I always love seeing the different perspectives you all bring to conversations like this. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure to like this video, subscribe if you haven't already, and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next update, because with results like this making headlines, you can bet there's going to be plenty more to talk about in the days ahead. Thank you so much for watching, I'll see you in the next video, and until then, take care of yourselves. Bye!